Hey, I'm Rachel,
And I'm Amanda, and this is Beyond a Ballad.
powered by DoorDash. Hello, and welcome to season 2 of Beyond a Ballad. I'm Rachel, and here's Amanda. Hello.
Hi everyone.
I can't believe we're here. I really can't. Season 2.
Season 2. It's
Uh,
so exciting.
It's like season 1 was such a roller coaster because it was our first, and we learned a lot, and we had amazing guests. And this is kind of like my older daughter. I say like, oh, this is a big girl thing, and I kind of feel like season 2. It's like we're growing up.
So true. And like, could there be a more critical
Oh my gosh.
time in politics, Canadian politics, world politics? Like, this is sort of the dream season.
It really is. It really is.
It'll encapsulate the American election, potentially a Canadian election,
potentially
some provincial elections.
Yep.
We got a lot going on.
Some spicy provincial elections that we're going to talk about.
Spicy.
But first, we came back for our emergency episode because it was getting so crazy. And so many people reached out and said, oh, I needed that emergency episode. Thank you. So we have, shockingly, a lot to catch up on. But first, how was your summer? Like, what did you do? You were traveling.
Summer was a dream.
Yeah.
Doesn't it feel like a long time ago?
I know. I'm like, what did you do?
We've already been through back to school.
Yeah, I can't remember.
Fall activities starting. I'm like, what happened in the summer? I spent a lot of time with my family this summer. For those who don't know, I have 3 kids. I have twin girls who are 7 years old, and I have a 10-year-old son who's a go-kart racer.
This is the coolest kid I've ever seen.
He's pretty cool. And so we spend, what is not so cool is we spend a good chunk of our summer at racetracks.
I was like, I thought you were going to say at the beach or racetracks.
No, at racetracks.
Because he's competitive, right?
He is. He's a great little, he is going to be competing in the Rock World Finals in Italy. And
oh my God.
10 years old.
What?
Isn't that wild?
Okay. Are go-karts the same as cars? Like, does he have pedals and everything?
Yeah. And they go fast. He goes like 100 kilometers an hour.
What?
Yeah, it's wild. And he's been doing that since he was like 7.
Does it terrify you?
It can and it has. But I would say I've grown a bit of a Teflon resilience to those moments where it feels a little scary, because the truth is a lot of sports can be scary. Racing down a ski hill can be scary. And playing in a hockey game can be scary, or being on a football field can be scary. So I think that, what I know about my own kid is that he has found something that he loves so early in life. That's awesome. That he puts the time and dedication into it. If kids run 30 laps on the track, he'll run 300. He's the real deal when it comes to commitment. And so I have to trust, even though sometimes it's scary.
Totally.
That he's got this. And my job is obviously it's to keep him safe, but my job is also to be his biggest cheerleader and fan, which I am.
Are you sporty like that? Where did you get that from?
No, Rachel, no, I'm not sporty.
I knew what that answer was.
Anyone listening to this is like, looked at my Instagram feed, is like, oh girl. No,
I think we made a sports analogy one time last season, and we all know how that went.
No, okay. On CBC, I have made too many sports analogies, and every time I try to make one, I screw it up. So the fellow panelists on our panel love to make fun of me and my inability to land the sports analogy.
That's hilarious.
But my husband was a former race car driver, so he definitely comes by it naturally.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yes. I'm lucky though, because my girls have zero ambition to be on a racetrack.
Oh gosh, that's great.
They are, they're into ballet and tennis.
Oh,
and I know.
That's so cute. My 3-year-old just started tap dancing, which is hilarious.
She's tapping at 3?
Tapping. Yeah.
I feel so young.
Tiny tappers. They're so cute. Oh my God. She's going to
Tell
be
me
a Broadway
about your summer.
star.
Is this what you've been doing? Have you been at tap studios?
Yeah, pretty much. She's obsessed with musical theater, so it's hilarious to see her out there like performing her little tap dances. I had a really great summer. I mean, I am trying to think of what I did, but a lot of it was spending time with my girls, and we have the most amazing summers out here in BC. So I was on the island, in the interior, in Kelowna. Anyone that hasn't been out here during the summer, you have to come because it's really a special place, especially up in the interior. And our wildfire season this year was great, knock on wood. We didn't have these massive fires like we had last year. We had some across the province. I won't say none, but Kelowna and the surrounding area were okay. So ultimately a great summer. And then obviously watching just everything unfold in the United States and et cetera, et cetera. I'm really sitting here trying to think of what I did.
Doesn't it feel like it does? And every parent who's listening right now totally understands this, right?
100%.
Like, because September is like flipping a switch.
Yeah.
You know, you are shutting down summer. You feel like it went by in a flash, way too fast, blink of an eye. And suddenly you're into like race mode where, you know, you're rushing to 65 activities and trying to get all the school supplies and all the things. So it does feel like a long time ago.
Yeah. It's like we're over that back to school hump, and everything before it is just a blur.
Exactly.
It's just a blur. Okay.
But it's kind of like, we always say this, right? Like, we're like, oh, it's like Super Bowl season when, oh my God, here I am making sports.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Don't do that. But it's like, we say that about these pivotal times in politics, whether it's elections or a by-election or, you know, a leadership race. We love it. And it has been Super Bowl season for us, has it not?
Yeah. And I'm watching because it's only going to get even crazier on all levels of government. Yeah.
More scandalous.
Cross-border issues. Yeah. I'm like, this is a good season. So
it's a wild ride. But for somebody who's tuning in for the first time and may not have, and if you haven't had the chance, like, go back to season 1, because the purpose of season 1 was really to talk to some of the most influential voices in mostly Canadian politics. We did have some American focused pods as well, but I think if you're kind of like listening in for the first time, and the why for me, and I think the why for you, but feel free to jump in, is really this timing in our lives really encapsulates for me how important it is for women especially to be involved in this conversation about politics, about the decisions that are being made that will affect us and will affect our families, our children. And I think that right now what's happening in politics all over the world, but certainly we're seeing it in like sort of an amplified way in the US, is so many women's issues at the forefront.
Yeah.
And I think so if you've always kind of felt like, I don't know, those aren't the kind of conversations I want to have, or I feel intimidated to have that political conversation at my dining room table, I mean, like, let that go. Yeah. It is time for all of us to be having these conversations. Yeah. And that's what we're going to do this season.
For me, on the flip side, and this is a good thing to add, this was smart of you. Welcome to everybody who's new here. We're so thrilled to have you. And I think the flip side for me is women who at this point in time, at this point in history, feel like they want to be more involved, but they just don't know how. Yeah. And there's no education on how the systems operate, who the people are, how they can empower themselves to actually get up and do something. And so part of the reason that we started this podcast is also to really inspire that actual work.
Definitely.
For women to get out there and do stuff and have their voices heard. So I think it's a cool moment in history too.
So if you were to say, like, before we get into everything that's happened and everything that's going to happen,
oh my gosh,
it's enough to fill up hours. We're going to try to do it in our short podcast. But if you were to say, what can people expect from season 2? What would you say?
A lot of election talk.
Yep.
A lot of pretty awesome voices, a bit more US stuff because we have obviously some big US guests coming up, and a lot of pivoting based on what happens in Canada.
So true.
I mean, we're planning around a fall election in next year, but we're ready to go as soon as they are. So maybe we should start with that, because a lot of people today were asking me, like, what's going to happen with this confidence motion in Ottawa? And the headlines for the last few days have been that Pierre Poilievre, the opposition leader, is going to table a confidence motion next week.
When the House resumes.
When the House comes back. Well, the House resumed on Monday, so this will be week 2. He's really getting on it.
Totally.
But we are expecting him to table a motion that says one line. It says, the House has no confidence in the Prime Minister. And so going back, a confidence motion is what makes the government fall. There's only certain times that a motion like this can be tabled. It's an opposition day in Ottawa, and so they can table a piece of legislation. The automatic confidence votes are financial bills and also national security bills. So usually we see things like this around the budget. Like if the budget it doesn't pass, they go into an election. So if a confidence motion doesn't pass, we're thrown into an election. Now, interestingly, we all know that Jagmeet Singh pulled out of CASA, the confidence and supply agreement with the Liberals, a few weeks ago, and has said that he will only support them in these confidence votes on a case-by-case basis. So in positioning this vote next week, and especially around this wording, which is very clear so that it's harder for opposition parties like the NDP, like the Bloc, to say, oh, we don't agree with it. He's doing some wild footwork that's going to play out very interestingly. And I told you, I think it's not an easy out for either the Bloc or the NDP on this one, but the Bloc has already said they will not support this motion. So for all those wondering, it's not looking like there's going to be an election.
Right. And for those who are listening and they're like, CASA what? So
good point.
The confidence and supply agreement was made between the Liberals and the NDP. And it was really an agreement between the two parties to move some things through Parliament that the NDP wanted to move. And I would say kind of the central items would be things like dental care and pharmacare. And in exchange for those things, the NDP would support the Liberals.
Right.
With that agreement in place, they couldn't lose a confidence vote. And so we were really looking at a fall 2025 election while that agreement was in place. Just last week, when Jagmeet Singh and the NDP decided to pull out of the agreement, it really left the Liberals vulnerable. Because without that agreement in place, it means that when a confidence motion is played, that the Liberals have to seek the backing or have to have the backing of another party.
Because they're a minority.
As Rachel has just said, the Bloc seems to be willing to stand with the government, at least for now. But they have some conditions that they want to have met as well. So we shall see how that plays out. Jagmeet Singh this week said that he would not be voting with the government next week. So we have at least two parties.
I missed that.
Yes.
Did he come out and say that? That's crazy.
He did say that.
Interesting.
So it's
the Bloc's their only option.
Bloc's their only option.
Because they're the Liberals currently hold a minority, meaning they don't have enough seats to pass it themselves. They need a partner. And so somebody's got to come on board. Sounds like the Bloc is going to do it, though.
Right. But it feels more challenging to make it all the way to October 2025.
Yeah, it
I
definitely.
think, a few months ago, I was certainly one of the people who was saying, no, I think we're going to make it. I think we're going to make it all the way. Now I feel definitely less confident. I think that, I could easily imagine a spring election.
Yep. That's what I've been
certainly
saying.
Imagine an earlier election. So I think that we probably make it through 2024. But all bets are off when it comes to 2025.
Yep. That's my money. That's what my money's on. It's been on, for the record, for a year that we're going to have a spring 2025 election.
Because, yes, we have.
But you also have to look at like what position the other parties are in. So everybody's in their back room saying, how do we want to go into this campaign? Obviously, the Tories are in a great position. Politically, they're in a good position. They're polling at 43% is the most recent poll, as opposed to 24 for the Liberals, who are next. They're in a great financial position. They have great candidates that are coming out. The Bloc and the NDP in this shift with the agreement is changing their direction. And they're trying to say, we are a strong party alone. We don't have to work with the Liberals. That for me indicates that campaign team is thinking, okay, we're going to have an election in the next few months. That's not something you do a year before. I think it's really about building the momentum around Jagmeet and the NDP team and seeing how that plays out. Once the Bloc and the NDP feel like they're in a better position, that's when we can start saying, okay, motions like this are not going to pass. And I just don't think we're there with the NDP or the Bloc, although we did have 2 by-elections this week also. One in Manitoba and one in Quebec. The Quebec one was crazy, super close, but ultimately the Bloc took that away. That was another Liberal stronghold. And we talked about strongholds for the Liberals in the St. Paul's by-election during the summer. But that went to the Bloc, which was a big indicator of their support in Quebec. And Quebec is really a litmus test when we look at campaigning, because Quebec seats make a huge difference in the outcome of elections. And so that was an interesting thing. Obviously, the other one in Manitoba, the NDP held on to that seat. It was very close with the Tories, not close enough that they ended up winning it, but there was a lot of support for the Tories in an NDP riding. So those are things that all play into the calculation of when do we hold this government? When do we vote against a confidence motion? And in my mind, next week will be very entertaining. And for people like us, we're going to be sitting by. But ultimately, I just don't think the Bloc and the NDP are in a position to pull the chute on that yet.
No, I mean, we can single out the NDP probably for good reason, because they obviously have a national footprint and the Bloc does not. But the NDP are polling at 16%. So it would be hard for me to make the case that the NDP should go to the polls right now.
Right.
I think they have a lot of work to do. They have a leader who they've had for some time, but despite that has really failed to break through. And I think their challenge has been that the things that have been really important to them, like dental care, like pharmacare, the Liberals end up getting credit for because they were the governing party.
That's right.
That passed that legislation. So I do think that they see themselves as needing a runway to get more money. They need more funds to be able to put together an election campaign that's going to be compelling. And they need the time to convince Canadians that they weren't just the mouthpiece of the government, that they have a leg to stand on their own.
I think it was so interesting. I totally agree with that. And it's all about Jagmeet's positioning. So 2 things. When he broke the agreement, he did a really strong video calling the Liberals names and saying they were weak. And I was like, wow, he's on fire. This has totally changed his tone, what his communications people are writing for him. The other thing is, we saw the other day a video come out of him on Parliament Hill, and there was protesters who we don't know who, yelled a horrible thing at him, and he went up to them nose to nose and said, "Do you want to say that to my face?" And that just played in. I know it was an organic moment, but it kind of played into that whole strategy of like, we are strong, we are the NDP, we can beat Pierre Poilievre, who he's now positioning as his only opponent. You barely hear him talk about Justin Trudeau. And I think that viral video just played into exactly the hands that they're trying to deal.
Yeah. And I think what's interesting is, Poilievre and the Conservatives have had a really good, strong run.
Yep.
They have controlled the narrative. They have set the agenda. They have put the governing party, the Liberals, on their back foot for months and months. They've had, in my opinion, the strongest communication strategy. And yet, if we wait until October of 2025, that's still a full 13 months until another election. And that is, the whole world can change in 13 months. And when you have opponents that are looking at you as the, squarely as the one to beat, that's a terrible position to be in for 13 consecutive months being attacked consistently, which is another reason why Poilievre, given the polls, given his fundraising numbers, and given the fact that he does not want to spend 13 months with all the parties attacking him, wants to have an election as soon as possible.
He also wants to define the ballot question. And you'll hear him say, we need to have a carbon tax
in
election.
Quebec and everywhere else.
Well, the carbon tax election is really the message, right? And that's because the person who defines that ballot question is usually the one that's going to win on it. Like by saying that we're voting on carbon tax, public opinion is on his side. If that could be the ballot question.
Quebec.
Except in Quebec. But like we have NDP premiers like even David Eby this week came out and said, which was a crazy flip-flop we're going to talk about, but he's trying to own that. And will that ballot, which is great. And I think that that's an amazing strategy and he is owning it right now, but can he keep doing it for 13 months? What will carbon tax sound like, be like in 13 months from now? So they're really hoping that this government falls, and I think they will. But let's talk about Trudeau too. Let's do a bit of a check-in on all the parties, because what's happening on the Liberal side of things?
Well, that is a big question, Rachel.
Well, I can give you my opinion on what's happening.
I think that obviously the Liberals have had a really challenging few months. And I think, the loss of 2 by-elections did not help.
Right.
I do think, or 2 by-elections that they could have or were expected to win. I do think that the way that the Liberal Party is trying to position what will happen this fall, you may have seen it in the newspapers, and that's Trudeau Unleashed.
Yes.
So have you
read? Can you tell me about that? I keep looking at that thinking, what does that mean? I'm so compelled.
Me too.
Is it going to go well? I don't know. That makes me nervous. That
for them or for
them,
the Conservatives?
For them. Okay. Because what does Unleashed and politicians do not go well together. So what is that going to look like? It's going to be more of his personality?
Well, listen, this is what I think. What we saw in the House of Commons over the last year was a lot of a defensive stand, but a pretty polite point of view from the Liberal Party in the face of some very aggressive attacks from the Conservatives.
Yeah.
And we've talked a lot about how ugly the rhetoric has been in politics and how divisive it's been. And Poilievre has really convinced a lot of people that the country is broken, that and I think that what the Liberals did in response to that was tried to say, but wait, here are the things that we've done. I hope that what Unleashed means is that they're prepared to put their gloves on, that they're prepared to fight harder, that they're prepared to use more compelling language, and that the politeness will ease a bit to allow them to make the true case of what it would mean to have a Poilievre government. And is the country really broken, or can they fight back against that notion? And I think as a Liberal, I'm hoping to see more of that. I'm hoping to see a stance that will move the needle. And I think the Liberals have really, really struggled with doing that over the past few months.
Yeah. And
what do you think Unleash means?
It's really hard when people are like going to grocery stores and can't buy food to tell them the country's not broken. So it's an uphill battle for the Liberals. But I think Unleashed, I thought, was going to be more, because everybody knows that Trudeau is a master campaigner, right? He goes on these bus tours and people love him. And it's getting a little more burly out there for him a little bit, but he typically is a great campaigner. And so in my mind, I thought Unleashed was kind of like him showing more personality, people getting to know him more, the actual, like, who is Justin Trudeau, more than he's the prime minister and he's wearing all these policies. So it's kind of like,
I like that,
shifting. Did I just give the Liberals an idea?
It was a good idea.
I'll send them an invoice.
You listening, people?
but that, in my mind, that's what I thought it was. But I also, in my mind, thought it was Trudeau unhinged, which is what it reminds me of. I don't know that wording was so great, such a great choice, but Unleashed, I'm very interested to see. And now a shout out to our amazing sponsor, DoorDash, for making this episode possible. Season 2 of Beyond a Ballad is now officially powered by DoorDash. Our experience in politics taught us how to recognize brands and corporations that act on their values and put people first. DoorDash is one of those brands. Just like we go beyond a ballot, DoorDash goes beyond delivery. Across the organization, they're committed to helping businesses reach new customers, providing Dashers with flexibility, and helping everyday Canadians find more time for what matters most. DoorDash also leads a variety of great initiatives supporting underrepresented and undersupported communities by giving them access to visibility, resources, and financing with programs like Made by Women and Black Food Energy, celebrating women and Black-owned restaurants, and relief funds for restaurants that have been impacted by natural disasters in Canada. Over the next few weeks, we'll be highlighting stories from local restaurants across communities in Canada that partner with DoorDash to help them grow their business. Because DoorDash empowers Canadian businesses, Dashers, and entire communities.
Like, I do think that the Liberals there's a lot still left in the toolkit, right? Like they haven't unleashed an ad campaign. They haven't, I don't think that they put forward an argument that Canadians are responding to yet. So I think that there's some white space there.
Yeah.
And I think that if they're able to capture the imagination and the attention of Canadians, maybe if they're able to play off the back of Kamala Harris and what's happening in the States, which we all believe will have a significant impact on our own election.
That's smart. Yep.
And I do think that we're going to talk about the American election, obviously, but one of the things that I think is important as it relates to the Liberal Party specifically is that Kamala Harris has entered into this political realm on the back of the hope and optimism message. And for so long, we have been void of that kind of message, right? Like we have been told, it has been shoved down our throats that the whole thing has gone to hell in a handbasket, that it is broken and it's miserable. And suddenly she's there and she's starting to infuse hope and optimism back into this conversation. And that is a place that the Liberals have played in before. It is a message that they have carried and won on. And I think that if that can bleed over the border, there's an opportunity there for them. I don't know if Trudeau as a leader can effectively convince Canadians that that's what he is after, a decade in government. I don't know that that's possible, but I do think it's a tactic that could be considered.
It's so interesting because Kamala's come in on that message and yet she's the incumbent government, which is typical. Like she's the change, but yet the incumbent. So that's super weird. We're going to talk about that in a sec, but I don't know. I keep thinking about like all the struggling Canadians, the number of people we're seeing horrific crime on our streets here in Vancouver and across Canada. And it's such a different dynamic in Canada and our numbers are so much smaller that hope and change campaign is awesome and it's something that emotionally we need for sure. But I just don't know. I feel like the Poilievre and the Conservatives have really honed in that we can do better message. And I agree. It's going to be an uphill battle for the Liberals, but they're not in campaign mode. I agree with you. And for good reason. Like they don't want to be in a campaign right now. So they're not giving any indication of that. But once they do enter that, I'm really interested how they're going to frame it. I mean, they're obviously going to frame Pierre as Donald Trump North, but the U.S. election will have a huge impact. So let's go there.
Yeah.
Let's turn to the U.S. What's happening?
Oh my God. So the last time we got together,
yep.
Kamala, the last time we got together, my goodness, this was a lot has happened since then.
A lot.
So
there was no VP.
No, and there was she hadn't nominated her running mate, and there wasn't a DNC. So she hadn't been formalized as the candidate.
The Democrat National Convention. And there was no debate.
There was no
which
debate.
Was wild.
And there was no second assassination attempt.
There was no second assassination. The things that happen in the U.S. are just crazy. It's not even comparable up here. I mean, assassinations, like, thank goodness. But
yeah.
Okay, let's talk about.
So rewind.
Tim Walz. He's pretty cool. I know a lot of people don't like him. You don't like him?
I love him.
Oh, you love him. I feel like I want to hang out with him.
Definitely.
Is that what? Is that crazy?
I love how they're calling him, like, America's dad.
Yeah.
It's so
like Dalton
it's so
McGuinty.
Refreshing.
It's like Dalton
so
McGuinty
wholesome.
used to be called Premier Dad. Yeah.
But for those who don't know, the interesting factoid about Tim Walz is that he was this idea of weird, right? If you were watching early on in the campaign, and the Democrats started using the term weird as it related to the Republicans, and it really caught fire. It was like, it went from 0 to 1,000. Everything was weird. It was really quite funny. And there were a million memes made after it. And, social media was truly captivated. The origin of that comes from him.
Really?
Yes. And because of that, he actually, because of many other factors, his popularity rose so quickly that I think at the time that we last spoke, we didn't even talk about him as a potential contender.
You're right. Yes, it's all coming back to me. You're right. We did not. We were talking about who could be the VP pick. We were hoping it might be Gretchen Whitmer and a double woman ticket. Yeah. That's right. We didn't even talk about Tim Walz.
We did not even talk about him.
Yeah.
But there he is, and he is well liked. Their campaign, I would say they're on fire. They're on fire. Their social media feed, if you're not following
social is wild. I've used wild way too much in this episode. I apologize, but really that's kind of how it feels right now.
Yes.
The lives on Instagram are serious goals. Like, everything is, I can just click on the thing and I can just watch it no matter where I am.
Yes. We will be talking for a long time. And as communicators ourselves, we're going to be talking for a really long time about the genius of Kamala Harris's campaign.
Yeah.
And specifically her social media campaign. Whoever is behind that campaign is going to get a lot of credit for a really long time. They're going to go down in the history books. She's also had some huge endorsements. So we'll talk about the debate in a second.
Yeah,
but
I'm going to dive into.
She famously got the endorsement of Taylor Swift.
Oh,
the Swifties.
Yes.
And that post was also to die for. If you haven't seen it, go on it. She posts herself with a cat. She refers to herself as the cat lady.
Unmarried cat lady.
Unmarried cat lady. It is all good stuff. So I would say, like, from a pop culture sort of hitting all the right notes, the kind of campaign that, like, inspires and gets people excited and wants to share, they are doing all the right things.
It's so interesting to me because as somebody that loves campaigns, like, I love the strategy.
Love.
She's taken a real middle ground. Like, she's not heavy on policy. All of her policy stuff is, like, kind of wishy-washy. I wouldn't say she's a really strong candidate on any kind of policy. A lot of it has to do with wedging herself against Donald Trump, and so taking opposite positions. Even, and many people have talked about this, and the clothing that she's choosing, that she is very demure, that it's like very basic clothing. It's nothing too fancy. And I know people hate when we talk about clothing, but and women, but that's been a big narrative over the last few weeks. I think, unlike the Trudeau Liberals, this hope and optimism is kind of working. because they were the Democrats in the United States. The centrist left was lost with Biden. And they didn't know what to do. And I think people are like, we don't even care what her policies are. She's awesome. We'll vote for her. And then there's Donald Trump, who's out there, you know, to his credit, speaking to like a real base of supporters. And these people are diehard Trump people. I was on a plane the other day, and like 20 people, a plane from Toronto to Vancouver, and 20 people with Trump hats walked on. And it's like these people in Canada. And these people are like real supporters. And he's speaking a language that I think is very different from hers. It's very plain English. He sits there and he says, here's the issue. Here's my solution. And that's a great campaign technique. I don't know if they're having any more debates, but I would say when you juxtapose the two campaigns, hers is a lot of social media, showing her at a podium, her incredible smile. Like really, that's a winning candidate smile that she has. And he's actually heavier on the policy stuff. And that's what
he's also heavier on the lies.
Well, yeah.
Which is part of the problem of his campaign. First of all, he chooses JD Vance, who there is no way that the Trump campaign isn't at home every day going, wow, did we ever make a
we liked him the last time
mistake?
We talked. We like, thought he was okay.
How wrong were we though? Like we were there's nothing likable about that guy. There's nothing redeeming about that guy.
He's definitely I think he's dangerous. He's not pulling the woman vote. I'll tell you that much.
No, and he's not like just the spread of misinformation, the lack of appeal to women, the very scary policy implications around women's rights, women's reproductive rights.
Yep.
If there was ever a campaign to galvanize women against, the Trump-Vance campaign has to be it.
Yeah.
And women in particular, and that's why this discussion is so important on this podcast, because women will play an absolutely pivotal role in this campaign.
Yes.
And God willing, we get, I'm not even religious, but we come to the other side of it and we see the power of that vote. So that once and for all, we can say, do not put your lame ass, like misogynistic, anti-women policies in the window anymore, because they won't fly. Women in America have the opportunity to send that message loud and clear, and I sincerely hope they do that.
Yeah. The question is, what does the electorate care about in the US? Because there are also women that are Trump supporters. There's a huge contingent.
Who are they though?
They're
who are these
they're
women?
His base voters.
And they're terrifying. They're worse.
Well, if he can bring them in with all the people he's bringing in on other policies, like there are a lot of voters in the US that are like, access to abortion, kind of low on my list, but affordability, housing, relationship with Russia, like those are things that I care about. Yeah. So I said on the pod before that I love Kamala Harris. Like I'm an OG Kamala supporter. But from the campaign perspective, I mean, let's not discredit, as much as our personal beliefs maybe don't align, let's not discredit the power and the ability to communicate and just the incredible following that this man has, regardless of who his VP is. And then we had the other day a second assassination attempt on Trump's life. Not successful, thankfully, but he put out two
I
emails,
would say, Rachel,
fundraising emails off of them.
I actually would discredit it, because I think that to credit it does a disservice, because what we're crediting then is misinformation and lies. And it's like, the migrant issue of Haitians in Ohio, and the fact that they on national TV in a debate,
they're eating the dogs,
eat pets, and that should be grounds for not being able to run. Like that should be like
you're done. They just seriously off the stage.
So I cannot credit somebody they may have a powerhouse communications ability, but if they're using that skill and the technique to spread lies and misinformation, they get no credit from me.
Fair.
None.
Fair.
I just think that campaign is so wildly dangerous, and I think that I think it's terrifying to watch. I also think that his communication hasn't been very good. I think that he's stumbled through things. I think that he sounds like he's confused. I think that the things that he used to, really attack Biden on are coming back to bite him, because he's starting to exhibit some of those behaviors. And she just looks like an absolute freaking powerhouse beside his inability to do what he needed to do on behalf of Republicans. But you know what? You get what you deserve. Republicans nominated him. They put him in the window. They put Vance in the window. If Americans make that choice, that's it. I am packing it. You heard it here first. I am packing it in.
Are you moving to the U.S.? Where are you going? Oh my God. Okay. Well, let's talk about the debate really fast, because I agree with you on that point. I think it was so interesting to watch that and see his age juxtaposed to her age.
Totally.
And how the last debate, he looked like this young, spry guy, and then he looked like this old man next to Kamala. She
also ate him for lunch. She rocked that debate. She rocked it.
I think she did exactly what she needed to do. And that was to go in there, jazz him up, like get him all riled up.
Oh, yeah.
And then peace out. And she didn't need to win. And like I've talked about this in a couple of talks I've given, that debates aren't really about winning for campaigns. It's about, can we get out and alive, and not lose votes in this. And I think that's exactly what she did. He looked unhinged at some points. But again, I am going to stand by the fact that he's pointing out a lot of policies, some of which are untrue, some of which are true, that are very clear. His communication is here, problem X, solution Y. So that she had a harder time doing that during the debate, I felt. And also, again, with this, she's the old administration, but also the new administration. I think she had a hard time winning on, here's what my plan is for America, and here's how I defend our track record. I would,
but I would say, I think what I would also say about that is that we have diminished our politicians to sound bites, right? We don't actually want to hear an argument. We want to hear a powerful punchline that's going to make its way to the front of the newspaper headlines. And because of that, when somebody gives a thoughtful answer that requires, a more complicated or more robust statement, it tends to not land as well as oh, you don't like immigration? Well, I'm going to deport them. That's not a policy. That is a lame, that is a terrible, awful, no good, very bad soundbite. And so I think that where it may have felt like she was trying to be thoughtful in her answers against somebody who is a reality TV star. And that is challenging. But that being said, I really thought that she, as a former prosecutor, I thought she baited him so well.
She did.
She was like hook, line, and sinker.
Totally. When he said they're eating the dogs, her reaction was hilarious. She's like, in what, where am I? What?
Totally. She was all of us.
Yeah, she was all of us.
All of us.
That clip especially has brought me great joy.
But I'll tell you this, Rachel, because this is so crazy. So after that debate, I had posted on my own social media feed on Instagram about it, and particularly about that heinous accusation that he made about people eating pets.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm not going to lie, I had people saying, oh no, Amanda, there are news reports that confirm that in this community, neighbors are eating the pets. It's like, that's how quickly it spreads. The crazy spreads.
I know. Anyway. But you know what? He picked that up. He made, and then he quickly shifted it to, oh, the city manager confirmed that they weren't, but like that's in his best interest. And I was like, whoa, that was fast. He spun that fast.
Totally.
So I don't know. We'll have to keep watching because it's only going to get crazier.
Are we ever? We're not going to stop watching people.
Can we talk?
You want to hear Amanda get riled up? You just come on this. You just come on the podcast and listen to me talk about Donald Trump.
Donald Trump. Oh God, I hope he doesn't win because we're going to go downhill very quickly here.
Totally.
Okay. Can we talk about crazy elections before we wrap here? We have to talk about the BC election. I'd be remiss. So since we last spoke, there was 3 big parties in British Columbia. 4, sorry. The BC United, which had been in government for a long time before the NDP. They are the former BC Liberals, the BC Conservatives, who have never held government, BC NDP, who's currently in government, and the BC Greens. And we thought we were all going to the ballot box, la, la, la. All these center-right people were debating between the BC United and the BC Conservatives. And one morning, we woke up and Kevin Falcon, the leader of BC United, had decided that they are not going to be running any candidates in this election. And he threw his support, his personal support, behind John Rustad, who is the leader of the Conservatives. No indication this was going to happen. In fact, they tried to merge multiple times, and it had not worked out for them. And so I think a lot of us had just resigned to the fact that we are going to have to make that decision at the ballot box. Well, there's no more decision to be had currently, kind of, because that didn't play out as well as had hoped. And now a bunch of the BC United candidates that the Conservatives didn't adopt into their party are running as independents. These are people that have held seats for long periods of time, that have real potential to win. There's calls for the creation of what is being called the New Liberal Party of BC. There was a lot of talk about that. Yeah, Elections BC said no to that name, unfortunately.
Why did they say no?
Because it's too close to BC United, which in brackets says former BC Liberals. And they can't have, it would be too confusing on a ballot.
Oh, because it's still on the ballot.
And because BC United announced they are going to run a few candidates in order to get reimbursed for some of the campaign. And they also are not folding the party, which is what I'm hearing all the time. The party still exists. They are just not running a full slate of candidates. And they are publicly supporting John Rustad and the BC Conservatives. So the polls.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Because you know so much about BC
I could
politics.
go do a whole thing on this. Yes.
I know. And you should, because it's so fascinating.
We're going to have some leaders.
That's true. We are. Mm-hmm. Okay. So the candidates that are running as independents,
who
were formerly BC United candidates, who were formerly BC Liberals.
Yes.
Formerly
of
the formerly of the formerly.
Yes.
If the party still exists, why can't they run under the banner?
Because the leader has the sole discretion to revoke, under the BC United Constitution, to revoke any candidate to run for them. So he has revoked all of those. But
you said they're still going to run some people. That's what made it confusing to me.
They are going to run in, they need a certain amount of votes in order to, I think they're trying not to win. They're just trying to get to a certain number of votes. And so those are going to be like strategic placements that they're not hoping to win.
Fascinating.
It has been an absolute roller coaster. And what we're seeing now in the polls is that instead of these 10% around BC United combining with the 42% or whatever with the Conservatives to give them the lead, we're seeing that the Conservatives are still a few points under the BC NDP. And that is primarily, I believe, because of some of the policy positions that the BC NDP have gone after in the last few weeks since all of this happened, to try and bring in those lost liberals. That's what I call them, the lost liberals.
Lost liberals.
The
liberals without a home.
The homeless liberals. Yes, exactly. To try and bring them in on carbon tax, which he's now saying that if the federal government got rid of it, BC, who was the first province to ever bring it in under the BC Liberals, would get rid of it too. And that is a huge, huge position change. We also have a lot of talk about mental health and addictions and whether involuntary care. He's now said he will support that after many, many years of saying that he will not. So it has been a wild ride. And every day is a different story. It's
okay.
like,
I have two things on this. One is a question for you. One is a thought or a comment.
About the lost Liberals.
One is a clarification, actually.
Yes.
So for those listening, the BC Liberals aren't like the Liberals.
Correct.
The BC United, which was formerly BC Liberals, are not like the Liberals.
No,
they were more like conservatives.
No,
right?
They are a big tent party of both federal conservatives and federal liberals.
But wouldn't you say the policies were more like conservative?
They were pretty centrist. Like BC Liberals at that time brought in the carbon tax, was the first party in Canada to do that. And so there was always people that were obviously more on the conservative side, but the Conservative Party of British Columbia has existed long term. They've just always been much, much, much more right than the BC Liberals, and probably misaligned to the federal conservatives, although now they're kind of aligned to them. Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
So my question for you is, it's a prediction question.
What's going to happen?
Rachel, who's going to win this election in BC?
Okay. If you ask me tomorrow, my answer might change. Looking today and this week, and I will say the writ is going to drop tomorrow, Saturday, meaning the election officially takes off on tomorrow. My gut is saying the NDP right now, but only for this reason. John Rustad has been more silent on things, which also makes me question, like, is he going to come out with some big announcements and change the whole game? Wow. Question mark. David Eby's policy shifts are really an interesting grab for votes, and it's been working. We see in the polls a little bit, but they're still pretty much neck and neck. I'd say today my money's on the NDP. A week from now, that might be different. And John Rustad is giving actually today a talk at the Union of BC Municipalities, and typically those are big speeches with big policies. So I'm interested to see what comes out of that. Yeah.
Okay.
Every day's a new adventure out here.
Every day.
Holy.
There are some things happening in politics.
And then the one woman running as leader, Sonia Furstenau, who is so lovely, and we are going to be speaking with later this month.
Yay.
And she hopefully will pick up some seats too, but who knows? Who knows? Yeah. The whole world could be different.
It's
by
so
October
true.
19th.
It's so true.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well.
Oh, that was a mouthful.
That was a lot. Did we get to everything? If we didn't, send us a message and tell us what we missed, what you want us to dive into.
Yeah. And you know what else you should tell us?
What?
You should tell us who would be your dream guest.
Guest,
If you're listening and you want us to talk to somebody out there, let us know who it is.
This is my favorite.
We're going to go
game.
for it.
This is my favorite game, as you know. Tell me who you want, and I'll try and make it happen. That's my.
You know what? If anyone can make it happen, it's Rachel.
I'm the best chase producer in the whole world. Well,
you are.
Yeah. That's my greatest.
You wear so many hats.
So many hats. That's my great joy, though.
You're also my favorite conservative.
Oh, that's so nice. You're my favorite liberal.
Aw. Am I the only liberal?
Yeah, I'm like trying to think of another one. Depends. I don't know. I know a few BC liberals. Does that count?
No, I don't think it counts. That's what I'm saying.
We don't know.
Think it counts.
We don't know anymore.
So
oh my gosh. All right. Well, that's it for us. And we'll be back next week with our first dinner party episode of the season. So check back with us next week.
Thank you for listening. New episodes air every Friday.
Subscribe on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on Instagram and find us at beyondaballot.com.